First, I want to welcome everyone. Today, we're going to tackle the beast, the question that we all have questions about, which is dealing with attendance. And for anyone who attended Mega last week, we did a nice 2-hour deep dive, kind of talking all through attendance. And really, I want to explain from the state level down to the LEA level how your attendance is calculated so that you can make the best decisions of how the setup needs to be for your schools. And remember, attendance is something that can be set up individually at the different schools in a district. There are certain district setups, but as far as attendance preferences and whether the whole meeting and daily discussion goes on, that can be done at the individual school level. So let's start off in the AIM portal and where attendance is captured as a state and how that is found inside of PowerSchool, because I think it's very important that everyone in the district, including your registrars, the enrollment clerks, the attendance clerks, your secretaries, whoever it is who's putting the attendance in on these students in the computer, needs to know how your settings are configured, because those settings are what's going to guide where your best effort is put in putting the correct attendance records in the right places. Because in PowerSchool world, there are two attendance tables. There's meeting attendance over here and there's daily attendance over here, and they don't interact with each other. There's two separate tables. And one of those two tables is going to give a value. And you're going to hear me say the word value quite a bit throughout this webinar, because it's the daily attendance value that the state of Alabama looks at when it goes to configure whether a child was present or absent for the day. And so when we're looking for all of that information for accountability, for the report card, for who your chronic absenteeism children are, it is that daily attendance value, it's called a DAV, that we look at. So where do we see it? Where does it come from? And who presses the buttons to determine what it is for you and for your district? So I want to first start out in the student data tile. So for all of you who are familiar with AIM, inside of AIM, we can see all of our students' data. I'm going to flip my screen into the AIM portal, and I'm actually going to show you my son. We're going to go living, breathing into a true student record in the state of Alabama and show you where it came from and what it looks like, so that when you are trying to look at your student absences, when it comes time at the end of the year for you to verify your data in the student portal for 9 months, you will know where to look to verify this data. So when you're in the student data tile, for everyone who's had access to this, this shows all of your students and all of their information that we're pulling outside of PowerSchool. Inside of the student data tile, depending on your permissions, there are all of these different tabs that we have access to that pull all of the parts and pieces of that student record from PowerSchool here to the state, and this is where we do our state reporting from. We are very different from the normal PowerSchool users that do all of their state reporting inside of PowerSchool. For the state of Alabama, our data reporting is inside of this portal right here. So when I want to check my students to see who has the number of absences, if I want to look to see who are the students that are going to have that 18 or more absences, so I know they're going to be listed as my chronic absenteeism. If I want to know what my, where my report card numbers are coming from, this is where I'm looking. And the specific place where I'm at right now is located under prevention and support, because the prevention and support office is the office that kind of oversees this type of accountability information. When you hover over the prevention and support tile, you have all of these choices. The one that we're looking at right now is I have it filtered on students and absences. And basically, depending on if you're looking at your district, if you're looking at your school, and over here you can filter. I happen to be in Opelika City because that's where my son attends school at. So you can see exactly the student, all of them listed in your schools, and how many total absences we are looking at. Now, notice you don't see anything for excused and unexcused, because that's old iNow ways. In the PowerSchool way, the only thing the state is looking at as far as whether they were there or not is that daily attendance value. These total absences, notice for my son Bradley last year, it says he has 6 absences. That's what the state sees. If I want to see the exact dates, it is showing for his absences, because maybe when I look in PowerSchool, I'm seeing 8 absences or 12 absences or 2 absences. I'm seeing a mismatch. If I want to see what dates that the state is seeing, over here on the left is this attendance detail tab. When I click on it, it's processing. Oh, I hope I didn't sit here long enough and it timed out. Now, give me just a second because I have to hide this so that it doesn't show any other kids' data. Let me go back to the 21-22. I sat here too long for it. Get it back on prevention and support, absences, and filter for Royster. Okay. 2 seconds. All right, here we go. So we're back on Royster. So when I go to that attendance absence detail, there we go. It now shows the actual 6 days that are inside of the PowerSchool portal that they are considering him absent. So when you're doing your checks and you want to know what days to look at that absence detail on the individual students that you think might be a conflict. Now the question is, okay, Stacy, so you showed me where the state sees the absences. Where can I see this match for match report for this one student inside of PowerSchool? Because I will tell you, you're very limited in the number of reports that are actually going to pull that daily attendance value. Keep talking about value. I don't want codes. I don't want anything other than what's pulling me those values. And these are showing my absence values. So I'm going to pop over to the one report that if you're wanting to look at an individual student, we'll pull that for you. How many of you have printed an attendance profile report for a student in PowerSchool? Where does this report live at? When you are in PowerSchool, see here I'm at a school level, under System Reports, one of the pre-built reports that we have is this one right here. It's called the Attendance Profile. Once you have your student or group of students, preface, it will only run for 200 students at a time because it is such a huge report to run. So if you're in a large school, you kind of have to chunk your kids. That attendance profile will print just like this, and it is the one report that will show you day by day those daily attendance values for any dates that have attendance records placed on them, whether it's an overall absence, a tardy, a check-in, a check-out. If there's any kind of attendance record being placed on a student, it will print in this profile right here. So remember, when I looked at student data, I had 6 days that it was given as being absent for Bradley. So when I look at his attendance profile from last year, I can see up here at the top, I can't highlight it with my cursor, but you see right here, it says absent 6 times. So I get a perfect match. So I know that his record is being fed correctly to the state. Now, when I want to look and see where those absences are, notice that I have these different columns in here. Now, depending on how you're set up, whether you're looking at meeting or daily, and I'll get to how you configure that for this, you're going to have different looks right here. If you are configured to look at daily attendance to capture your daily attendance value, this is what yours will look like. If you're configured for meeting attendance to capture your daily attendance value, yours is going to show individual meetings over here to the right-hand side. So I can see that right here, if I look through the values that say 0 inside of here, those are my absences. Because when it's time to look at a daily value, you only get 2 numbers that are sent to the state. A student is either sent a value of 1, meaning they were present for the school day, or they're sent a 0, meaning they were absent for the school day. So there's your key that you're looking for. Did the student receive a 0 or a 1 for the school day? And we will talk heavily about what creates that 0 and 1, and then we'll practice marking attendance records so that we get the correct one. So when I see these attendance values of 1, that means, yes, the student might have checked in or checked out, but they didn't miss enough time that they were considered absent in the state's eyes, so their attendance value is a 1, meaning present. But if they did miss a number of minutes to be absent, then they get that 0 value. And you will see throughout here that there were 6 days that had a value of 0 for them. So that is your best report to look at an individual student. Now, there are some real-time reports that will actually show you those daily attendance values so that you can do some checks and balances on them. And we'll talk about those a little bit later in the webinar. Just as a preface, remember, this is a 2-hour webinar because attendance is a very heavy topic to cover and can't even get close to covering it in 1 hour. So student data tile, prevention and support, looking at absences, will match the number of absences you see according to those attendance values here in your student profile for attendance at your school level. So now let's talk about what settings get this report and get these ones and zeros, because there's only one thing that is consistent across the entire state, and that's that the students get a 1 or a 0 based on that 51% of day that they have to be in attendance to be counted present. After that, it's completely up to the district's choice how they set what triggers a 0 and what triggers a 1 as far as which table it looks at. So in the back of your mind, I need you to know meeting and daily. One of them is going to trigger that, the other one does not in your school. And so it's important for you to know which setting does that. So where are those settings at? I want to go through each of the attendance settings and explain them to you so that you will understand how your attendance is being calculated. When you're at the school level, you're going to go to setup and under school. And depending on who's on this webinar, you may or may not have access to this, which is why I say it is very important to have this as a district decision. Bring everyone who touches attendance to the table so that you will see how you have this set up. Up under school setup is this entire attendance area right here. I want to go through each of the different pieces of this so that you understand what goes into calculating that 0 or that 1. So the first thing I want to look at is this one right here called attendance conversions, because this one is pretty much state regulated by law and by the administrative code. For any of you who have seen our attendance manual, it is stated in there what constitutes a presence for a student. In other words, we have a set number of percent of the day that a student must be in school for him to or her to be counted present for that day. The attendance conversion is what sets that. In Alabama, we basically just have one type of attendance conversion, and it's a full time. It doesn't matter if a student is a half-day student or a whole-day student, because we do have some students who have half days based on IEP, but in the state's eyes, that is a full day for that student. And I'm going to tell y'all, ignore these right here because this is a pilot site that I'm looking at, and I was playing around some stuff, but you should say none, none, none all the way across here. In your setup, the only thing that you're going to have configured is this down here, which is called this percent time. When I click into this percent time, you have 2 tiers. And this is where this value is being defined at. So remember that I said it's the daily attendance value that reports to the state. And they're only going to report 2 numbers, a 0 or a 1. Here are those defined zeros and ones as you see in this day attendance value column. What this screen says is that percent of time present is going to trigger this daily attendance value on a student record. And this is kind of a tier. So at 0% present, a student is going to receive a daily attendance value of 0, meaning they're absent for the day. And basically any percent from 0 up until they hit 51 will give a 0 attendance value. So think of this as a threshold, a range. Once the student hits 51% of the day present, the student is then issued a daily attendance value of 1. That is the rule for attendance, the law for the state of Alabama. It is percent of time that a student is in school for a given day. Now, if we had even, bigger rules, that's a pretty simplistic one. If there were tiers to it, there would be tiers inside of here, but we don't have that in Alabama. So again, these are ranges. Anything from 0 up until 51 is issued a 0, and 51 and above is issued a daily value of 1. So everybody in the entire state has this configuration, and this configuration should be attached to every bell schedule that the school has, even on half days. So 51% of your half day would constitute a present for that student. All right, now I'm going to go back into the school setup. Scroll back down under attendance. So we talked about the conversions. Now I want to talk about attendance codes because they also play a slight key in that 0 or 1 being triggered for the student. Attendance codes are set by the state of Alabama. Schools should not be creating or using any other code other than what has been defined in the data attendance manual for the state. So when you have your codes, these are all pushed. Our implementation teams did the setup behind the scenes for each one of these codes. Something to note, if you are a district that has to open a new school at some point in time, we're always building new schools. If you have a new high school that starts next year, or elementary school or middle school, when you create the new school, these codes are pushed down from the state. So 24 hours later, the codes will pop up in this bank. But you as a district have to do the setup beyond the codes. So if I were to click into one, I'm just going to click into alternative placement. This is the setting behind the scenes. All of these settings are listed in the attendance manual. I want to show you this attendance manual so you'll see why all of these are checked the way that they are. If you've never seen the data code manual, this is how you know all the codes and their definitions and what they are at the State Department. So I want to go look at the attendance and absence reasons section because there is a link in here to the attendance manual. In this attendance manual, which still is in effect, even though it says 21-22, at the end of it, I'm going to scroll, there is an entire glossary of all of the codes. Just need to find them. Second. There they are. It's Appendix H inside of your attendance code manual. In Appendix H, this is where all of the codes are listed and all of the status of the codes. So it tells you what the symbol should be. It tells you the present status. So in other words, is this code considered a present code or an absent code? Whether it is excused or unexcused, and whether it is absenteeism exempt or a contributor, and then a definition of the code, because a lot of times we get emails about, hey Stacy, when can I use this code? What does this code mean? All of this is in this table right here. This table determines what is checked on this page right here. So when I look at alternative placement, if I come over here, let me close that tab out. Webex bar gets in my way. Here we go. If I look at alternative placement, you will see it is an AP code, present, excused, and chronic absenteeism exempt. So when I look over here, I should see present, excused, chronic absenteeism exempt. That all is set from that state level and must be set up that way. What is set up down here is controlled to some degree by the districts. One of the big one is this one right here. Teachers can assign. Districts get to have the choice of what codes a teacher is able to see when they are taking attendance in Power Teacher Pro, whether they see just excused or unexcused. You have a yes or no option. If a district chooses yes, then that means it is part of the drop-down list when a teacher goes to take attendance. If it says no, then that means a teacher can never assign that attendance code to a student, which in this case, alternative placement would not be a code that a teacher would assign. That would be something assigned from the office level or possibly district level, depending on why the student had been placed in alternative placement. But this present status of present or absence will come into play if you have a certain type of FTE setup. So it's very important to know which codes are present codes and which one are absence codes. Because also, when you are taking attendance and putting check-ins and check-outs on a student record, you get a prompt. This student has missed X% of the period. We suggest a present code, or we suggest an absence code. You need to know which ones are present and which ones are absent so that you are assigning appropriate codes. Because this works very differently from iNow, where we put a code in for everything and it didn't always mean that the kid was absent, especially with check-ins and check-outs. In PowerSchool, if you use the wrong code and you put an absent code on there, it will take those time points off, or excuse me, the minutes off of that student record, which could give an absence for the state when you didn't mean to. So we'll talk about that when we practice some of the runs of attendance. So those are your attendance codes. I'm going to go back into the school setup. And now look at the important one. Full-time equivalency. So there are two sides to PowerSchool. I want to pop open another screen just so I can show you the screen on the student so that you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If I go to the attendance screen on the student, depending how your school is set up, you have a choice of running meeting attendance or daily attendance or both for your students. Depending on which one of these that you set up for the school and which one of these you set up on your FTE screen, that is where your DAV is calculated at. So of all screens, this screen right here, if you want to screenshot it, write it down, write the breadcrumbs. This is the most important screen that everyone in your school needs to know how it's set, because this is going to determine which record they need to make sure is 100% correct in all your check-ins and check-outs, in your codes and everything. Because this screen and what you have as your defined attendance mode right here is the one that calculates that DAV, that daily attendance value. So in my screen setup right here, mine is set to daily, to the daily record. It can also be set to meeting. You as a school have to make that decision. But once you make that decision, that is where your best effort needs to be put, and that is where that attendance profile is going to pull the attendance, and that is where the state in the AIM portal is going to pull that attendance. So when I look at this saying daily, that means over here on Mickey Mouse's record, the screen that the state is going to read attendance on, even though I've got meeting and daily both set up, the only one the state's going to look at is this one right here of daily. And it's going to be these. And the number of minutes on this screen that's going to produce a 0 or a 1 at the end of the day. And that's another important piece of this puzzle. Attendance, that 0 or 1, is not captured in real time. It does not change back and forth based on check-ins and check-outs as the day goes along. That 0 or 1 is calculated at night. It is a calculated value by PowerSchool. At 9 o'clock at night, all of our servers across the state kick off a process. This process goes through and checks all of the students' records. It takes the number of minutes in the school day that they attended and divides it by the total number of minutes present in their schedule according to the Bell schedule and divides it. And it looks to see, according to that conversion, is that percentage 51% or more. And then at that time, it will stick either a 0 or a 1 in a table hidden inside of here in PowerSchool and sends that number to the state. So you're going to be looking at one of two things. You're either going to be looking on this screen to get your 0 or 1, or if on this page yours says meeting right here, then that means you've got to look on this screen. for that 0 or 1. Except you have to kind of, on the meeting side, you have to dig a little deeper. So if let's just go into this week right here for meeting. Now I'm on the actual meeting screen. It's these minutes here. And it's very easy to see that percentage on the meeting screen. When I'm on this Tuesday date, notice it said that he had looks like he had a clock in because there's a little clock. And if I were to click on it, I would say, yep, he clocked in at 1:02. So he was absent all those periods, but he was present for fourth period. He only got 143 minutes in the day. If I click on that 143, notice I have a chart. This chart's very beneficial because it tells you right here what that percentage is. So I know by looking at that already what's going to be sent to the state. And in this case, if he was only present for 25% of the day, does that meet that 51% threshold? It does not. So that means he's going to get a 0 at the state level and not a 1. A 0 at the state level means that's an absence. So one of two screens that you have to look at, meeting or daily. What we found at the end of school last year is that a lot of discrepancy was had in what was set here and what the secretaries were actually updating at the schools. A lot of districts had daily set right here, but were never touching the daily record. They were only doing check-ins and check-outs on this side. Well, that's not going to affect that DAV value. If it doesn't see it over here, when you're set to daily on the FTE, it doesn't mean anything. So I have to go right here and know that, oh, he only has 338 minutes, or in this case, 0 minutes because of that absence. Those play big time into that calculation. The other discrepancy was the other way around. We had people who had meetings set right here, but then on the student record, we're only doing check-ins and check-outs on the daily side because it wasn't as much work. So do you have to have both run to fidelity? No, that is completely a district decision. But what you do have to have run to the fidelity is the screen that you have determined you're going to produce your 0 and 1 from right here. So everyone in the school needs to make sure they understand which one that is. And again, this can be set up differently at each school. So maybe one school you want to look at the daily record. Elementary schools do that a lot. And then maybe at the high school, you want to look at the meeting record because you really want those individual periods to be correct and then to come from the teacher side. Completely up to you. I'm going to go back to the school setup. And I want to look at attendance preferences. You have two choices for that FTE, meeting or daily. Depending on which one of those choices you make, you need to absolutely make certain that you have that choice checked up here as being able to run inside of PowerSchool. Most people out of the box came with it set in as meeting. Now let me explain why 99.99% of districts in the state do always want to take meeting. Whether you turn on the daily or not to go along with it is completely up to the districts. But why do you want to turn meeting on? If the meeting checkbox is not checked, teachers will never be able to take attendance in the teacher gradebook. In order for teachers to take attendance, for that little attendance chair to pop on, you have to have meeting turned on. If you don't have meeting turned on, that means all attendance has to be run through the office. So every day teachers are going to take attendance on a piece of paper, send it to the office, and the office marks all those kids absent. I don't know any person who's got time to do that in their districts. So I know that most of y'all are turning it on because you want the teacher to call roll. You want the teacher to take that attendance. If you want to be able to do check-ins and check-outs, which all of us in Alabama do because we want these minutes calculated correctly, and the only way to do that is to process them at the point in time they were actually checked in or checked out. Daily. If you want to turn daily on as well, you absolutely have the ability to do that. Some schools are turning it on, some are not. If you choose to not turn daily on, then you cannot use daily as your FTE value, because then it's not got anything to calculate off of because you're not taking it. So you have to make sure that if you as a school make a decision to set daily to calculate that 0 or 1, you actually are capturing it inside of PowerSchool. If you do decide to turn on daily, then you also get one more advantage. You can actually run reports on daily codes. So many times you might get a request, or the principal wants to know, hey, Stacey, how do I get a report of the number of students who have been absent more than 10 times or more than 10 days with a parent note? Well, the only way that you can run any kind of report like that and get a number of days is if you actually are running daily attendance and capturing that code. What I see from a lot of schools is that they will run meeting, have everything turned on as far as FTE through meeting, and let meeting capture the percent. And then once they get the percent, they just pop in a code for the day so that they can then run those reports. They don't worry about the check-ins or check-outs on the daily side because they're not using that to calculate the FTE. They're just doing it on the meeting side. So that works as well. If you are a district or a school that decides daily and meeting both are the way that you're going to go, then you've got to set up what's called an attendance bridge. This almost goes back to like our old school iNow ways, where everybody took attendance first period, and first period, whether they started out as being present or unexcused, because those were the only codes we gave the teachers, that would pop over in the daily record. Okay, you can do the same thing in PowerSchool. You can pick a period in the bell schedule and say, okay, period, I'm going to let you be my bridge. I'm going to let whatever a teacher puts in for this code right over to the daily record. And this is where then this decision comes in. Do you want that period bridge to be a one-way sync or a two-way sync? If you choose a one-way sync, that means whatever code is over here in the teacher gradebook is going to write over here to the daily. And that's the only direction that the information can go, from meeting over to daily. So if I'm in the front office and a kid was absent first period and then they check in, and so I end up and go and make this a tardy, if I change it over here on the meeting record, it will write over to the daily. But if I'm the office person that comes over here and changes it on the daily, that does not automatically update the meeting, because my bridge is only going one way, from meeting to daily. If I want it to go both ways, meaning it doesn't matter where I make the update, they're going to write back to each other, meeting to daily and daily to meeting, then I would choose a two-way bridge. And I will say this, for the majority of your setup, high schools are most always set to one way. Elementaries are most always set to two-way. Middle schools are a pretty good combination of both, depending on how important it is that all your teachers actually take attendance. If you are at a school where it is very important that all the teachers take attendance every period and it be accurate, you're going to want a one-way. Because there is a situation, I want you to think about this. A student is present first period. So a teacher goes and marks present. That present writes over to the daily side. So right now the student is present on both the daily table and the meeting table. At the end of first period, the student checks out and is out the rest of the day. Well, we all know that's going to be enough to mean that he is absent or she is absent as the overall day. You only want a one way. You would only want to update that daily and the rest of the periods to show absent. If you had a two-way, as soon as you updated this daily record to absent, it would force that back over to the first period, which the student was not absent first period. They didn't check out till after that. So anytime you want the individual periods independent of each other, you do not want a two-way sync turned on. Most of these right here, your default attendance page is just going to say which one of those pages is going to pop to first here, whether you want to see the meeting side when you click on attendance over here under academics, or if you want it to show the daily side. The number of days that a teacher can actually update their attendance inside their gradebook Most districts keep it to current day, but you can set it as many days as you want. So if you want teachers to be flip-flopping dates as much as you want, you can set that to any number of days. It's not a typically highly demanded thing. Most people keep it current date. These thresholds, again, this is helping to follow that 51% rule. So this is what's going to actually throw those thresholds on the check-in and check-out pages that we'll see in a little while when we get to that. Most of these others are pretty much set for you. Consecutive absences notification, there is a tab inside of attendance at the school level and district level that will show you the number of students who are currently missing from school for this number of days. And it is consecutive up until the point that they are absent. So let's say I have a student who has missed the last 6 days of school. This student's going to show up on a tab in attendance for me. And if he comes to school the very next day, he comes off of that list. So this is not consecutive absences as far as, well, they missed 10 days here, skipped a few, missed another 10 days. It's current moment in time, the number of students in your school who have been out for whatever number of days you have set and have not come back since that point. So these are what I call the missing kids that we would want to look in on. And then these last two are really important for discipline. If these two boxes are not checked, then your principals or assistant principals or whoever it is that's putting this discipline in at the school don't get that opportunity inside the actual incident to go ahead and code attendance. They have to go to the actual attendance record. If you have these two boxes checked along with a couple of other places of setup, then once a principal marks a student as out of school suspension inside of the referral, they'll actually have the opportunity to go ahead and push those out of school suspension codes to the attendance record and not have to have somebody else in the office do it as a separate thing. So those are very important. So the biggest things that we need to make sure everybody understands on this screen is that bridge. And did you do a one-way or two-way to know how the data is flowing once the teacher takes attendance? Now, where do you designate that bridge at? Well, that's back up under your school setup. So the second most important thing to know besides these attendance settings right here is what your bell schedule in PowerSchool looks like. And we all can run multiple bell schedules. There are a lot of schools that have just a regular day. They have all the same classes every day, all year long. But then there are schools that on Mondays, they go to these 3 classes. On Tuesday, these 3 classes. And then they alternate and things such as that. All kind of different combinations of them. When you look at the bell schedule under Edit Schedule, this is what looks at the total number of minutes in the day. And it looks at it 2 different ways. So number one, remember how we said there's 2 tables. There's meeting and there's daily. And you get to choose which one your school looks at to create that 0 or 1 every night. So I want to show you where that denominator comes from and the total number of minutes. So first, let's look at meeting. So how many of you know that your FTE is set up to meeting? If you are a meeting school, or after this conversation, you decide to become a meeting school, here is where that information comes from. It takes the number of periods in your bell schedule. And there's a difference in scheduling periods and bell schedule periods because some of us create other periods outside of the bell schedule for just rostering type classes. But you would take, if you're a meeting school, when you set your start and end times to all of your periods, and it over here calculates how many minutes are in each of those periods, when you total those minutes up, that's how many minutes are in your school day as a denominator. So if you are a meeting school for FTE, you're adding up these minutes here, and that's your denominator. And what PowerSchool will do is it will look at every one of the periods the kid's in that day. And it will take all of the individual period minutes and add them up. And it will make that the numerator. And it will divide those 2 numbers to get that percentage. And it was on that chart that I showed you a little bit earlier. So if you're a meeting school, that's where your numbers come from. If you are a daily school for FTE, that means one of these periods is going to have a little green check box beside it because you have set that period up with your daily block of time. In this case, I made first period, or it could be in your case a homeroom period. If you were to look at my elementary schools, you would see a homeroom period. That period, and you only get to choose one. You can't have a bridge multiple times throughout the day. You can't make every period a bridge. Only one period can be a bridge. But whatever period you make, whatever code is written in that period is what writes to start that daily code. So if I go into period 1 here, you will notice that, yep, here's the individual period stuff, but here, use it for daily attendance is checked. And then I define what constitutes the length of day. So I'm giving it just this big old block of time. I say the day starts at 8 o'clock, it ends at 3:25. And what PowerSchool does is it looks at the number of minutes between 8 o'clock and 3:25, and that becomes my denominator. So when you are on daily for your FTE, if you chose daily as being what's going to calculate that 0 or 1 at the end of the day, these number of minutes determine what a day is. A place that I saw errors last year is that schools had daily set up, but when they set this up, they pretty much copied and pasted the times up here. So their entire day was only 100 and something minutes. It wasn't even a full day, so their attendance was way off. They had to go in and reconfigure this and then reconfigure the attendance settings for the whole year, which can be done. But this is what's going to give that total number of minutes when you're on the daily record. So if I go back to this student right here and click on the daily record, you'll see that on days where you have presence codes, that 445 minutes constitutes the entire day. What you want is, if you are running 2 of these methods, meeting and daily, you need the number of minutes to be exactly the same. So notice when I'm over here, I'm just going to kind of poke into this one. 445 minutes. When I click on the daily side, and in the meeting side, when I go into one of the meeting records, so let's go back to this right here, notice my denominator should also be those 445 minutes. Now, notice on this one is 445 minutes, but this one's 551, and this one's 529, but these are 445 and 445. So why would a student have more minutes than what's in the day? Well, that depends on what's been scheduled. If you look at this student right here, y'all, I apologize, they are pressure washing my windows, so it's going to get loud. In this student right here, you will notice that during first period, they were actually scheduled for 2 classes. If you double stack students' schedules, it will duplicate the number of time they have in their overall day. So when I click into this and look at their minutes, notice first period gives them both 106 minutes. So instead of having 445 minutes for that day, they have a total of 551 as the denominator. It's still going to add all of those up to see whether you have that 51% or not in the calculations. So it's real important to note how these are calculated. Also, in meeting, if you have a student who's attending a class at another school and you are using remote enrollments are calculated in this overall breakdown. It constitutes the number of minutes over in the home school and the number of minutes over in the remote school, and ties all of them together to get that overall. So this bell schedule is very important because it's going to drive the minutes. It's going to continually look at the minutes inside of these schedules. So if I look at any of these other schedules, you will see the number of minutes that's going to constitute and what an entire day is. You'll see in this one, here's a different schedule that in this situation here is ran and gives us an extra period of an advisory period. And in the calendar, this is set up to appear only on Thursdays. Well, notice it shifts how many minutes are in first period and second period and carves out this other period that also can wrap in that attendance. So the bell schedule and what you determine for daily attendance, depending on if you have meeting and daily set up, are the big impacts that factor into your student getting a 0 or a 1 at the end of the day. So that is the setup that everyone has to understand, so that as we start working with student records, we know what happens with those records. So what I want to do now is go into the student record. We're going to use Mickey Mouse, and we're going to just simulate what attendance looks like, what gives the 0, and what gives the 1, and how much work do we have to put in this to make it accurate. So I want us first to look at the meeting scenario. So for the next set of minutes, we're going to run through the scenario where you as a school have chosen for your FTE to be meeting, which means it's going to be everything in this meeting record that's going to determine a 0 or 1. So I'm going to pop into this week right here, August 23rd to the 27th. And let's take this Tuesday, for example. So we're going to pretend today is August 24th, 2021. If I'm running a meeting FTE, then as it is right now, 445 out of 445, the student has not been marked absent anywhere. That student's going to get a 1 at the end of the day. So let's say the student was in class for first period. Well, that means if I'm running daily as well, it's going to put a present over on that daily side. If this student decides to check out, then I, as my front office person, am going to come to Mickey Mouse's record, and I'm going to click on this clock. And I want to say this student is checking out, and let's say he's checking out at 10:46. We have to pay attention to this screen right here. First, what period are we in? Well, it tells us right here, we are currently in period 2. So I know that right now this student was present first period, but he's about to check out sometime during second period. In second period, it says the student has missed 41 minutes of the scheduled period. A present attendance code is recommended for this period. So that means he's not missed enough time to be considered absent for the period. He needs a present code. However, has the student been present for the entire period? That answer is no. So I'm not going to leave the code present. If a student is missing any point of time and it's to be a present code, then your other option is going to be a tardy code. And this is one of the things that we've made a lot of mistakes with in checking through attendance. What I would then check, depending on the reason, so let's say he's checking out to go to a dentist appointment. A lot of people, and let's say that he's got a note, from a doctor saying he's going to a dentist appointment. We're so used to it now when we had a note, regardless of what time it was, we always put that code in for that note. If you use doctor's note here, that is an absent code, not a present code. Remember our list. Doctor's excuse is an absence. Tardies are present codes. There is a definition of tardy in here that states it's not completing the whole school day. It's not just coming in late. It's if you miss any point in time in the day. So the correct attendance code to place on this student in this case is going to be tardy excuse, because he's got a valid reason that he is checking out and missing this part of period 2. Now, my next option is this fill subsequent periods. Well, when it asks me, do I want to fill subsequent periods, it's asking, do you want to put this code for the rest of the day? So here's my question to you. Y'all got your chat pulled up? Let's kind of talk this through. If he is checking out in second period, and he's got enough to be there in second period, but he's not going to be there the rest of the periods, am I going to send this tardy down to the rest of the periods and fill this box? That is correct. Absolutely not. I am going to need to do something with those boxes, but it's not put that code in there. What about comments? Because we always have the schools that say, but I want to know why he was tardy. I want to note that he went to the doctor. Okay. So put your note there. Oh, except spelled in is with an N and not a B. Put your note there. And you can put your initials or however you want to do. You should have that in that comment field. field if you want to keep up with that information, because that can print our reports as well. So I'm going to hit save. So as it is right now, do you see that automatically took those minutes off? So now he's gone from 445 to 404 minutes, because we know that we missed that block of time that we checked out at 10:46 from 11:27. But he's going to be gone the rest of the day. As it stands right now, has anything happened to third and fourth periods? No. So that's where I need to come in and put that note. So if I want to show, because he's now going to be absent for those periods, I can actually use that absence code now that best fits that excuse that I put in the comments just a minute ago. And I can do it one of two ways. I can either drop it down inside of here and choose it, or if I want to make it a little easier, when you set that code a while ago, it put it up here at the top of the page. See this current attendance code? I can change it here and say, now I want to take doctor's excuse, and I want to put it here, and it's just a click. So you have two options. You can set it at the top and click in the periods, or you can drop down and find it in the periods, whatever you want to do. Here's the key. You have to hit submit. If you don't hit submit, it won't take those minutes off. And so now that student has been knocked down to only having 166 minutes out of the 445. So this student was present first period, checked out during second period, did not miss enough time to be considered absent in second period, so we put tardy because he missed some time but not the whole time, but was absent all of third and fourth period. So now let's take a look at this chart. So based on this, how many minutes he was actually there out of the total, here is my division. So in chat, tell me, is this student going to get a 0 or a 1 for that daily attendance value based on those calculations? Bingo. 0. So would this student have this date end up on that AIM report that I showed you earlier? Yes. Very much so. That percent is the key that you have to connect to that. Now, what if you're a school that says, okay, Stacy, I've got this set, so I've got the meeting, and meeting's my FTE, so yay, I got the state getting what they want. But I also want a daily code so that I can run reports on. So if you want to go one extra step so that you can then have a report on how many people are doctor's notes or whatever for the day, because we have now decided that this is going to be an overall absence for the day. If you are running daily along with your meeting, then what you would need to do is flip over to the daily record. And then on 8/24, so here is the week, and it is 8/23, 8/24. Apparently, I've already done some stuff on this date, been playing around. This is where, I picked a different date now, you would go in and actually put whatever code that it is. So if you were running 2 and 2, you would not have to put the check in and check out. You could if you wanted to. If you wanted everything to be accurate, you could do that check in and check out. Notice it gave 0 minutes when I put that code in, because all of a sudden I've said we're going to get a 0. In the daily record, you're only going to see a number of minutes if the number of minutes is enough to actually constitute a present value for the day. So running them both simultaneously like that does give you the best of both worlds, and it allows you to get those daily reports that you want on the student. But no matter what I put on this daily record, if my FTE is meeting, this daily record is only for my personal use. It's not for state use. It's not for anything else. It's for personal school use, where we can run our reports on how many kids had a doctor's note, how many kids had a this, or how many kids had a that. All right, so let's take another situation. I'm going to go back to the meeting. Let's see, I don't have anything on the 8/27, so let's play on that date. Let's take the week of 8/27 again. Now let's say it's the converse of this. Let's say that the student was absent at the beginning of the day and then is going to do a check-in. What is that going to look like? So again, remember, we're focusing completely right now on FTE being meeting. We'll go and do the daily in a little while, but I want to go through each scenario separately. So if the student had been marked absent, then I kind of need to force what the teacher would have marked. So let's say the only thing I give the teacher is unexcused. Remember, we're partway into second period. So here is what I would come in as. If the teachers had taken attendance, as they should have, this is what the screen should look like at this point in time, because it is 10:55. 10:55 is in the middle of second period right here, because second period runs from 9:40 to 11:27. So as the front office secretary, Mickey Mouse has been absent and has now come in to check into school. Since he is checking into school, and see right now he's showing 238 minutes absent. Again, to process a check-in or check-out, I'm going to click on this clock up here. And this time I'm going to say this student is checking in at 10:56. At 10:56, actually I want to change it. I want it to be later in the day. I really want it to be close. I want it to do it 11:27. Actually, I want to do 11:30. I want it to go into third period. There we go. Now I'm into third period. I'm clocking in at 11:30. So it tells me that I'm in period 3. So I'm right at the cusp where possibly third period has not marked attendance yet, because they just are getting the kids in and getting settled. It tells me a student has missed just 2% of the time, because 11:27 is when third period started. So I've only missed 2% of the period. So in this case, it tells me a tardy attendance code is recommended for this period. So see, sometimes depending on the time of day, and usually it's more in the afternoon, it will populate a tardy code instead of a present code, and you will know to put that tardy in there. But in the mornings, it typically says present and doesn't give you the tardy, and you as a front office person have to know to put that tardy in there. So in this case, I know for this period, it's going to be a tardy. And let's say they didn't give any reason. They just showed up to school. So I'm going to do tardy unexcused. Do I want to fill that subsequent periods? Again, I do not, because this right here is just for this one period. And then is there any going to be comment? Well, no, because he didn't really bring me a reason. So if I want to put no excuse, I can put that. And you can do whatever you want to on there. No excuse. And I'm going to hit save. So in doing that, do I need to do anything with fourth period? Says the student checked in. Am I good to leave fourth period blank so that the fourth period teacher can take attendance? I sure am. Do I need to go back and do anything with first and second period since the student did not bring an excuse into me? I do not. Now, if the student did bring an excuse, like maybe they had been at the dentist in the morning and they just came in, then I would need to go back and say, okay, these need to be changed to doctors or whatever. But in this case, the student did not bring a note. So I'm not going to touch those. Oh, I need to set that back to unexcused because I clicked on it. So I have the right codes for each one of these periods. The student was out first period, out second period, checked in right at the beginning of third period, no note, tardy, unexcused, fourth period is left alone. I'm going to hit submit. And let's see how many minutes he got for the day. So look at there. It says the student is present for 235 out of 551 minutes. So what is the state going to see as far as this student concerned? Present or absent? That's right. You're going to get a 0. So that means the student is absent. So if you are a district that decides to run meeting and daily, what do you need to do as a final step? Once you get them checked in and you check this screen right here and go, oh, he's absent, then that means I need to go record that absence on the daily side. Or do I? Because what should be on that daily side right now, since I have a bridge from first period over there? Remember, nothing was on that daily a minute ago, but what should I see on daily if first period is my bridge? I should see this code right here. So let's see if PowerSchool is working correctly today. Let's go to daily. And let's look at the 27th. Well, looky there. What do you see? I see an unexcused absence. So because it was already setting in that first period, and I know that first period is my bridge and first period is correct, I don't have to go touch daily. Only if it were to be a different code do I need to go update that daily side. So in this case, everything's in tandem. But again, is this the one sending the 0 to the state if I have FTE to meeting? Nope. This is the one sending the FTE to the state, or the DAV to the state as a 0. It's this one right here. Okay? So that is if you have meeting that is your FTE. Now, let me say this. If you are a school that sets meeting, the front office is not your problem. So in chat, I want you to tell me, where is your biggest obstacle in making sure that this screen right here is correct? Where are you getting the most errors at? Teachers not taking attendance. Yep. So let me ask you this. What did you have in iNow that helped with that issue that we don't have in PowerSchool? It fed the code throughout the day. How many of you missed that? Just type me a quick yes in chat. How many of you missed where when you took first block, it pushed it to the rest of the blocks? So would you like me to show you how you can make that happen in PowerSchool? You can't do it automatically, but I can make you make it happen in about 30 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to help you because I guarantee most people are going to set up meeting as their FTE. There'll be a few that will set up daily. I personally am a daily person. Like, I love setting it up on the daily side, but I know that most of y'all are going to want it on your meeting side. So how can we do that? How can we help the teachers help themselves and help our record be more accurate right here? So let me show you. So let's take, I actually want to choose, I want to change some dates. So y'all bear with me 2 seconds and let me, what week do I want to use? Let me go back into attendance. I want to go toward the end of school where I don't have a lot of stuff in there. Let's look at this week of May 2nd. Let's pretend that May 2nd, and actually I want to choose me 3 kids really quick. So y'all let me grab the mouse family. We'll add Daisy and Mighty in here. All right, let's go in Daisy. I should all be on the attendance screen, and I'm going to come down here to May 2nd. Let's pretend that all 3 of these students have been marked absent in first block by their teachers. So we do know that in order for this to work, teachers still have to take attendance first block. Just like in iNow, if they didn't take it first period block, whatever you call it, it wouldn't push down or do anything anyway. So first period has to be there. So of course, I don't have many classes. Well, that might just only work with Mickey then. Let's see, 5-2. Let's pretend. Excused absence here. Submit. And let me see if Mighty's got a schedule. Well, he's in one class. That'll work. And his first period, so that'll work. And let's go to 5-2 here. I don't have the dates. All right, we're just going to use Mickey on there. All right, so let's pretend that it's the end of your, attendance time or the end of first period, and you want to go and find all the kids who are absent, who have not been checked out or checked in, and you want to go through and push that attendance to the rest of the day. So it'll go ahead and update in the rest of the teachers' grade books for those periods. What you can do when you are in attendance, so let's go to the attendance page, and I'm here in the summertime, so I've got to play with some dates right here. So let me go back to May 2nd. Okay. So do you see on May 2nd, now typically y'all would have a whole list of students on this meeting tab, am I correct? What, anywhere from 20 to 200 kids absent, depending on how big your school is? you'd have a whole list of kids. It'll look something like, see if I can just pop a date real quick to show a big list. It'll look something like that, right? Y'all have big dates. Back to May 2nd. All right, so let's pretend you had a whole list. If kids had checked in and out, y'all would have notations that they had a different code right here. But what you can do is go through the list and find all of the students who have been marked UA for first period. Because that means the teacher marked them absent, they haven't shown back up to school. Basically, what I want to do is I want to take this code and I want to push it down to the rest of those periods. You can do it one of two ways. If you had a whole list of kids, you could check this top box and it would check all of them. Or you could come over here and just manually click each of the kids that you want to do this to. Basically, you want to use this list and make these kids your current selection. The ones who have only missed first period. And I'm going to hit this set current selection. Okay? It didn't do anything, but it's there. So I'm going to go back to the main screen, and I should just have Mickey in the list, but let's say you had 10 kids on there. In this group functions dropdown, there is this attendance change. I'm going to click on. Now, typically, if we were doing this in real time, this date would say 5/2/2022. I've got to set it because I'm in the summer doing this training. But let's pretend that it is May 2nd. So I come in here and say, okay, it's May 2nd. What periods do I want it to scan? Well, what periods are on your bell schedule today? Well, this is a Monday, and I know on my Mondays, the only periods we have in session are 1 through 4. So I don't want to scan period 1 because we've already taken period 1. So I want to look at period 2, 3. Now I've got an alternating schedule in this. You might not. You might just have a day. You just click what periods you have in that day. What do I want to scan for? Well, I want to scan for everything, so I'm going to leave all. Because whatever this kid might have pre-marked, whether it was in school, whatever, they've been marked absent. So even if they've been pre-marked for a field trip or school activity, whatever it is, I'm going to override whatever it was and put this absence in there because that's where they are. And so my next section says, what attendance code do you want to set for all of these periods? I want to put unexcused absence. And then it says, if anything other than a default present, do you want it to overwrite? I sure do. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going to take and tell this to do what I now used to do for me. It's going to take that first period absence and go ahead and feed it to the rest of the periods in the day. Because we know that if they check in or check out, that's going to be handled through the office anyway. This just goes ahead and lets the teacher know they are absent. So I want to hit submit. Now, let's go look at Mickey's record, or let's just go back to the attendance screen and see, did it fill that down for him? So I've got to put this date back in, May 2nd. And sure enough, what do you see? Now all 4 periods on Mickey have an unexcused absence. And if you're running meeting attendance, this is how you get it accurate. By go ahead and pushing that code down so that the teachers who aren't taking attendance aren't affecting that student. Because what a lot of districts saw, and I know y'all called and told me in your email, you'd have a first period teacher who would take attendance correctly, but then once the rest of the day happened, if the rest of the teachers didn't take attendance and that student was really absent, if only 1 period has an absence, he's going to be marked present at the state level. He's going to be marked present in your reports. And so this right there helps get the number of minutes correct on the student ahead of time. So when I go back into Mickey's record and I come down here to 5/2, let's see what happens. First period teacher marked him absent, and I from the office went and grabbed everybody that first period marked absent, and I went ahead and pushed it to the rest of the periods. And so now he's showing no minutes in the day, which is what we would expect. It gives us that exact same now functionality. And now, if he comes and checks in, then I'll just check him in and update the codes. So let's pretend it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yep, he's going to come for that 4th period because he loves his 4th period, and that's the only period he likes. So then I'm going to check him in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Or I'm going to check him in at 9:46 or whatever time it is that he comes in by clicking the time clock. and saying clock in at, let's just do an afternoon. Let's pretend it's 2:09 p.m. All right, well, that tells me he's in period 4. He's missed 24%, so he needs to use a tardy. So let's pretend he's been, I don't know, what's a good one? Let's use doctor again, or something that you want to do parent note, whatever the code is that you want. In this case, because this period is a tardy, I would change this one to a tardy. And let's say it was something legit, so we give a tardy excused. I don't want to fill because I've only got 4 periods. It is the end of the day, and you would put, whatever excuse is in there, and I hit save. So that takes care of that, but all of these are still unexcused. So if the student brought a legit parent note to you, there's a death in the family and had a funeral or something like that, but he's got a test 4th period, so he's coming to take a test or something to that note, then what do we have to do? We have to go set these to whatever excuse code we're going to use since he brought in that note. So again, I can either drop it down and change it here, or I can change it up here and then just click in the boxes. I'm a fan of just clicking it up here and then going 1, 2, 3 and got them changed. But I have to remember to hit submit. And so now my minutes have reconciled. He did come in, so we did have 0 minutes because we pushed it all the way down. But now he's tardy because he did come in at 2 o'clock, so he's there from 2 to 3:25. When I click on my number of minutes, sure enough, he only missed 129 minutes of the day. Or excuse me, he only came for 129 minutes of the day. Only there 25%. So what are we going to get at the state level? A 0 or a 1? There you go. You get a 0. Now, do y'all notice a really cool thing right here? In this pilot site, I have tried all kind of different things. Do you see this? Number of minutes at OHS and OMS. On his record, fourth 9 weeks, I did a remote enrollment into another school. I can see on this screen what they have at that other school. And all of those minutes together give me that big total of 498 instead of the 445. So this goes to show you anything you have at another school will feed into this meeting area for your meeting FTE and for that FTE to be correct. Now let's think about this. Remember, again, we're still under the assumption of meeting being your FTE. If I'm also wanting to get a daily code, because I've got that one-way bridge, what daily code is right now sitting on that daily side? Who knows what it is based on what you see on this screen? What code is sitting in there? That's right, that parent excuse. So do I need to go update it, or is parent excuse what it should be for the daily code? It is correct. No need to update it. The only time you're really going to have to update that daily code is if a student is present first period and then checks out second. So if I had this situation where, let's change it up here. Let's put a doctor's note. Let's pretend that this student checked out. I'm not even going to put the check in or check out. I'm just going to run through this. If this were your situation where they attended all of first period but checked out second period and got these absent codes, they're only sitting on 106 minutes, which for the day is 31%, which would be an absence. Right now, because present was in first period, present is what is setting over there on that daily side. Yes, I've gotten a few messages. This is being recorded, so y'all will be able to go back to this as many times as you need to with your people. So on this right here, because present is over there, and I need it to show that the daily doctor's excuse should be there. I pop over to daily and see this was on May 3rd. So I need to go to May 3rd. Here, May 3rd. It says present. I need to change that to doctor. And now I've got me a daily code and a complete meeting record. So how do y'all feel about when meeting is your FTE knowing how to take the attendance, knowing what the state's going to see, and if you do decide to give it a daily record as well because you want to pull those daily reports, how to pop over and give that daily. But I think really the game changer is knowing how to push that attendance to mark the kids absent the rest of the day to help your people. I really think that's the big one. So that is what we will do when meeting is your FTE. So what if you're a district that decides to set daily as your FTE? Well, then what do you have to do? Well, that's a matter of making sure that check-in and check-out is processed correctly on the daily side. If you choose daily as the FTE, that's where your check-ins and check-outs need to go to get the number of days correct. So let's pretend, so I need to start out that a teacher took attendance. So let me find, well, actually, let me go back to the daily and find a date that doesn't have anything on it and use that day. Here we go, this week of March 7th through 11th. No, that is not spring break. The reason I know it's not is because it doesn't have these little dashes. Do you see on this daily side where there are dashes inside of there? That means you don't have calendar days those days. That's when you put your holidays and stuff in there. And see, if I hover over it, it tells me not in session, spring break. So I know those are dates I can't use. So I'm going to work with this week of March 7th through 11th right quick. So let me go in and mimic a teacher marking a kid absent. I need to be on the meeting side. So if I go to the meeting side and scroll down to March 7th through 11th. Let's say it's Monday, March 7th, and Mickey was marked absent by the teacher. Let's say he was marked absent first and second period. Let's just go ahead and say it's later in the day. So I'm looking at this record. And right now I only have 2 periods on there. First and second. Now remember, why was I doing that on the meeting? Because that's where the teacher posts to. So I'm starting it where the teacher would have already done their piece and now we come in from the front office. So if we are a school where daily is what our FTE is set up, then that means the daily record is what you want to do all of your work into. So the teachers would have marked first and second period absent. But you are going to come in and decide whether it's really an absence or not based on your check-in and check-out times. And you want to make sure it's correct to fidelity in the number of minutes on that daily record. So that means I've got to come over here and look at this side of the screen. So I'm going to come to March 7th and notice, what do I see right here? It says the student has 0 minutes for the day because the teacher took attendance first period, marked it unexcused absence, and that is what fed over to this daily side. Well, now I need to get this daily side in check. So let's see what we do. If daily is my FTE, then I need the number of minutes of the day to be correct, which means I need to process the check-in and the check-out on the side. So how do I process that? I click on the clock. The clock is a check-in and a check-out. Now the check-in and the check-out on the daily side is quite a bit different because you actually have to put when the student is starting school and when are they ending school, because remember that daily is a big old block of time. It doesn't look at individual periods. So it's going to say, when did this student check in? Okay, so let's pretend that it is 11:19. So this student is checking into school at 11:19 a.m. I have to put a clock out time as well. And you're going, but wait, Stacey, the kid's not clocking out. Well, but we need to know when the day ended. And in this case, it ends at the end of the day, which is 3:25 p.m. Every daily check-in and check-out record has to have a start time and a stop time, which means if this kid was checking out at 11:19, the check-in time would be 8 o'clock, the beginning of the day, and the clock out time would be 11:19. So you're always putting the block of time the student is going to be at school or not at school. And let's say that it's a doctor appointment, whatever reason. I'm going to hit submit. All right, let's go find 3/7. So here it says 319, or excuse me, 11/19 to 3/25. When I, oops, wrong thing. Let me go back. Let me just submit again. When I click into this day, so I have two places to click in here. I've got the clock, which will do me the actual time. And if I needed to do another, a lot of people ask, well, Stacey, how do you do a clock in and out multiple times on the daily side? You just keep clicking that clock over and over again. They check back out, you adjust it, and you go to. When I go into this date, because now that I've put the time, I've got to decide the actual code. If I click into the day, here is where the code has to be chosen. Now, this is the one thing a lot of people don't like. It's missing something for us. Here it tells us a clock in and clock out was triggered and that a student has only been in school 246 minutes. Well, what did it give me when I was over on the meeting side? It actually gave me the whole fraction, and then it gave me the percent. The daily side does not do that. It just gives you the total. And so what you would have to do is actually do that division, or enter it in on the meeting side and let it do the division for you. So if I, on my calculator, I'm just going to open up Google. And I'm doing it on this other screen, so I can show you. I'm going to take 246 and divide it by 445 because that's how many minutes are in the day, and it tells me that's 0.55. So that's 55% of the day the student is there. If 55% of the day is there, is that student considered absent for the day or present for the day? Bingo, present in 1. Well, in order to get it present in 1, I've got to have a code that signifies present. Does unexcused absent signify present? I'll let that code go to the state. It doesn't matter how many minutes are here. This code is overriding and saying, no, you ain't getting any. I need to change to a present code. So what present code is that going to be? Do I put doctor's note because he was at a doctor? No, because what's a doctor? An absence. So I would put tardy, either excused or unexcused. Put doctor appointment there and hit submit. And now when I look at that date, instead of showing me 0 minutes for the day, it now shows me 246 minutes for the day. If you're running daily, do you have to go update anything on the meeting side? If your FTE is calculated from daily, do you have to do anything on the meeting side? That's completely up to your school. Completely up to your school. As far as the state sees it, if you're running an FTE of daily where we're going to get your 0 and 1, that's where your work has to come into. But here's what everybody's going to say. But Stacey, the teachers have to know whether the kids are there or not for those periods. Well, you could go do all that work on the meeting side like what we were doing. You don't have to unless your school wants you to. So if you wanted to then go over to the meeting side and go to March 7th, down, scroll too far and find it. I could then do that check-in and do exactly what I did just a little while ago. Let's say you checked in at 2:19, I don't remember now, p.m. And it would tell me that I need a tardy code, tardy excused, 4th period. And then, oh, this was a checkout. I did a check-in. Whoop, let's swap that. That was a check out, not a check in. So that would be an absent code, whatever it was. It'd be a doctor's for that one period. But then for these periods right here, he was actually present in those periods. And so overall, that would be an absence for this period, present for these. When I submit, again, you're going to see, I think I picked the wrong time, but anyway, it's over that 50-something%. And so you end up getting a better time inside of there. I completely picked the wrong time, or else those numbers would help. The daily FTE can be the more complicated of the two. The daily FTE is what a lot of people set things to begin with, because they were having the issues with the teachers taking attendance and it wouldn't calculate correct on the meeting side. And so a lot of people didn't want FTEs. Now that people know how to push that attendance on the meeting side over so that you can get a better calculation of the FTEs, a lot of people are going that way. I would say if I were the one setting this up and I wanted to do path of least resistance, path of best practice, at this point, knowing that what we know now about attendance, I would probably set FTE up to meeting. I would use that push to push those periods down for the rest of the day. I would still keep a daily record. I would just throw that code over there on the daily side so that I could run those reports. But as far as getting the state record to be consistent with your school record, hopefully everybody in here now understands what triggers that 0 and the 1. I don't think that's ever been explained before to fidelity to everyone, so hopefully we have now. And now you can start getting a more accurate view of this attendance. And yes, this is absolutely recorded, so anybody who came in late will be able to go back and watch every bit of this. I do want to show you a couple of goodie reports that will help you. Because let's say you are the person that is going to set up your FTE to meeting, and that you want to set your FTE up to meeting, but you also want to capture that daily record. And maybe you want to go and everyday check. All right, after it processes overnight, is there anyone who's out of sync? Is there anyone who got a DAB value of 1 showing present, but we accidentally gave them an absence code on the daily side, or vice versa, that we might want to clean up? There's actually a really good report that's built in here that will do that for you. So I want to show you a couple of reports that I want you to make note of. When you're on the main PowerSchool screen, I want you to scroll all the way to the bottom. You should see a real-time reports link. If you do not see this link, your person at the district office over PowerSchool needs to email me, because you have not had your meeting with Level Data so they could turn this on, and you want this turned on because this is free for you. There are 3 free real-time reports that are going to help us solve our attendance questions in Alabama. So when I click on this real-time report, you probably have a bunch of locks on yours, but there are these daily attendance details and daily attendance summary by date. You want the ones that talk about a daily attendance value for them. I want to click on this daily attendance details, because in this one it says for schools using meeting attendance, the calculated attendance value will be displayed as a 0 or 1. Noted as part of a calculated process. What this will do is allow you to look at those values. So I want to go into the daily attendance details first. Now, I will tell you, you should typically have your student selection made, and you typically want to run this for your whole school. So this is another one of those best practices. Let me actually go back to the start page, and let me grab all students as my current selection. So you got 1,475. I'm going to go back to that screen and just refresh this. And now I'm going to have 1,475 kids. I want to pick a day. Just going to randomly pick a day. Well, let's do the 5-2. 22. And I'm not going to choose anything. I'm just going to let it run this on all the kids. I'm going to show you what this screen will do for you. And depending on how big of a date range and everything, the longer it takes to run. Best practice is to run this the day after your attendance and then go see if anything's out of sync and just fix it. We can make attendance a 5-minute thing if we really want to. All right, so I've got all of these codes. So I've got my whole school and I've got all these different breakdowns. But what I really want to do is look for discrepancies inside of here. At the very bottom of this screen, there are two options. One is a daily attendance code, and one of them is your daily attendance value. And you know what, guys? Now that I'm thinking about this, I actually need to adjust this. Let me do a, hope that that's a school day. Oh, 21. And now I'm going to run it. I need more data than on those dates that I was playing with, and I've got way more data scrambled in the first part of the year. Okay. First thing you want to do is decide which code do you want to check for. So remember, we got zeros and ones. So let's first check for our ones. Let's check all the kids who are marked present. So I'm going to click down here, and you see I have two choices. I'm going to click present. So I have 1,300 kids who are marked present or received a present value from the state in the overnight process. Here's what I want to do. I want to compare their daily code to their daily value and see how many of them who are present actually have an absence value. I want to find the bad data. So when I click these daily attendance codes, I want to see which one, I want to check the ones that are not present codes. So here are all of your list of codes. Now, I'll tell you, your list is going to be different every day. The only list of codes you're going to see are the ones that are actually attached to a student record for the day you're looking at. So for this one day that I'm looking at, what are my absence codes? Well, that's an absence code. That one is parent excuse. I don't want to look at in school and out of school because those are going to be something else. Unexcused absence. So what I want to do is see, do I have any kids who got a present from the school but still had an attendance value that was absent? And as you click buttons, it reconfigured this page. And look what I have. No bad data. No kids popped up on this list, which means we took attendance correctly yesterday. Everybody who had a present DAV has a present code with their record on the daily side. Nobody has a mismatch. Let's see if it goes the other way. So I'm going to click out of those, and I'm going to change this. I'm going to say, okay, now show me everybody who's got an absence DAV. So show me everybody who had a 0 sent to the state last night. I got 119 kids that were sent zeros to the state last night. Do any of these kids have a present code on the daily side giving me a mismatch? Did I forget to go change or update somebody's daily record after I checked them in or checked them out, which gave me the 0 for the state? So I want to go through here and check all the codes that are present codes that would conflict with an absence DAV. So what are my present codes? That's present, that's present, that's present. I'm not going to choose any of those for a reason, just in case I didn't scramble data good enough. Present, access is present, tardies are present. These are where we find a lot of issues with tardies. And then the present code. Well, it didn't take all of them away, so it tells me, the number of kids, I've got 9 kids. It defaults this list. I've got 9 kids who were marked absent, but still have a present code. So it must have meant I forgot to go back and update that daily record so that my reports would be right. When you scroll down, you see those 9 kids. When you scroll over here, you see the discrepancy. The state received a value of 0 for these students, but yet their daily code has present codes on there. So something's not right, and this is where you can click into the 3 dots, go to the attendance page, and figure out what's not right and update it. Maybe the calculated number of calculated minutes was 0 here, but the code forgot to be updated here. And so what had been a present because first period took attendance and the kid was present, they forgot to go back and change it to doctor's note or to unexcused absence or whatever it is. So it will give you the mismatches. This is a great report for finding any errors that you would actually have made inside of there. So what you want to do in that report, I'll close out of these again. And again, this is the daily attendance details report under level data. You first want to choose which value you want to look at. So you make the choice. Do you want to look at absences first or do you want to look at presence first? You need to run it both ways. Whichever one you pick, you're going to then come up here to the codes and you pick the codes that are coded opposite. And you remember our data code manual? It might not hurt to print this out and put it beside your computer. Or even do this, make you a list of what are all the presence code and what are all the absence codes so that you know which ones you should be marking in these situations. And then you pick the ones that are opposite of that so you find the errors. So this report will help you find if you're really wanting to keep kind of a daily record but not use daily as the FTE. If you want to keep all your FTE in meeting, it'll help you keep those in check. Now I want to show you one more report. If I go back into level data real-time reports, daily attendance summary by date. So this would be where you can do a date range, and I don't want to pick a big date range because it will cause all kind of havoc if I do. Let's do 9 until 9/9 to 9/26/2021. It's not quite a month. So I'm going to run a month's attendance. You can run this for the whole year. Just know, guys, that it takes a little while for this one to run because attendance tables are really big. I want to run this on all the kids at this school. While this is loading, a couple of questions that have come in chat. How do I know what my school's FTE is? I don't have access to view. That is where I highly suggest that as a district, y'all get together and look at that school setup page that I showed at the beginning of the webinar. I would highly suggest any of y'all who are on this and you don't recognize anybody from your district on here with you, pull people together, make the meeting happen so y'all can really look through and discuss this attendance. All right, this right here will tell me the number of absence and attendance values present and absent for every kid in your school. So as long as they have some, so for example, Stacy A. Mouse, for this 1 month, has 12 present values. That must mean she enrolled later on. That's all she's got. Or no, it was 12 days. Excuse me, 12 attendance days that I picked in that date. Everyone else, if they have presence and absence code, you will see how many. You can do filtering. So like, how many of you want to know how many of your kids in your schools have more than 18 absences? You can filter that right here because look what you have. I want to filter for just my absences, and notice it automatically took all the presents away. And then min or max. How many of them have a minimum of 10 absences? Do you see that those numbers start changing and it starts giving me my list of students as I filter them? Y'all, these, remember, are the same numbers that are in that AIM tile. So I can see that this right here will tell me, you know, what it goes through. I can filter these. If I say, give me everybody who has a minimum of 5 absences, it automatically gives me my list of students. And then I can export them. And now I've got an Excel file with it. I can make them my current selection. I love that I can do the breakdown because maybe I want to just look at the males or the females or whatever ethnicity or whatever grade level and know where my grade levels are having the most attendance issues at. This report right here is your view into the state's calculations of attendance at a glance. And you can do all kinds of filtering in here, and it is very instantaneous. Show me everyone who's got 3 to 5 absences, you know, so I can send that letter home and that kind of stuff. This right here will give you, so this was called the attendance summary by date report in level data. So I can't stress enough how much I love those level data reports, and we are so gracious that they gave us those 3 free ones on attendance so we can go find our calculations very, very quickly. So that took me a little over an hour and a half to talk top to bottom how attendance works in here. I'm hoping that you can use this as a training mechanism for your schools. Now, I know that a lot of that original beginning is setup. They need to know the setup. You can always give them, and this will be recorded and it's going to be put out there, and I will email it out. You can send them the recording and say, hey, start at minute number whatever, and it will walk them through how to understand how attendance is captured. I highly recommend every district going on and watching this complete beginning to end. It will help you understand how it's captured, how to take it correctly. Now, I am going to stop the recording because that's the end of the tutorial. I'm going to let that start rendering.